to Valentin Consulting Guest Speaker Series. I'm Dr. Daisy Valentin, CEO of Valentin Consulting, and I am thrilled to invite you to our dynamic YouTube channel where we host our exclusive guest speaker series. And we are so excited to have Rico here today, one of our amazing guest speakers today. And we just want you to know that the purpose of this guest speaker series is to collaborate with thought leaders just like Rico and many industry experts, giving them a platform to share their knowledge and expertise with our community. And we are so excited and privileged to have Rico here today. So Rico, come and tell us a little about who you are, where you're from, and what you do.
Okay, hello everybody. My name is Rico Paul Vallejos. I'm originally from Argentina, although I only lived there the first 20 years of my life. And at this point, that's a minority of my life. I lived all my adult life in Europe and in the US, with some significant times of project work in other parts of Latin America, in Brazil, Mexico, and other places. And I studied cultural anthropology and sociolinguistics. So that is what my life became. I was studying computer science. I finished high school in Buenos Aires when I was 16 years old.
Wow.
And I began to study computer science. And then I had a chance to work with a German NGO in Europe to study cultural anthropology, sociolinguistics, leadership studies in England and Spain, with field work in the Caribbean and Latin America. I did that 2 years, and that totally changed my life, because after that, I continued to study, and I left computers behind and became basically everything in my life, professionally and personally. It's pretty much language and culture and language. Those two things is what I do for work, and also what I do in my personal life, in my hobbies. And the computer background comes handy because I've always been, since then, and I am an early adopter of technology. I'm always buying the latest toys, trying the latest apps, playing with things, and I enjoy doing that, which really helps, because one of my first jobs was in international marketing communications, and I was in charge of 3 modules of machine translations. This is going back a few decades. I was in charge of the German English translation, French English, and Spanish English. So I would hire and train. I was 25 years old, but I was hiring and training the people
amazing.
For those 3 languages. And I spoke, English was language number 4 for me in the order in which I learned languages. But today is my best foreign language, my native language, of course, Spanish. And the German I know nothing about, but I'm familiar with French and
But
Spanish.
you understand it probably still, right?
I
You probably
understood the
understand it.
system, so I would hire a German linguist and a French linguist and then a Spanish linguist to run those modules. And I would supervise them, work with them, glossaries, and teaching the machine to translate a little better. It was a lot of work, but very enjoyable, because it blended computers and linguistics and culture. And to this day, I use AI a lot, various tools, not just the regular consumer tools, for linguistic parsing, and when I need to write anything in any language or translate anything to any language that I can translate. I'm actually using artificial intelligence tools to make things better, to make things quicker, but it's more than just productivity, make things better. And so I use AI for that. I'm a certified translator. I've won a bunch of awards for advertising copywriting. So I'm a creative when it comes to advertising and ad agencies. And in a lot of the projects that I worked, I had the hat of account executive or project manager, because there were projects I was managing. I would hire a designer, some other writers, sometimes translators, copy editors. So I manage projects, and that's pretty much what I do today, to this day still. I just manage different types of marketing communications and public relations projects for clients. A lot of times the client is a video producer or an ad agency. Sometimes it's the company, the client,
Mm-hmm.
directly, maybe a brand manager or somebody like that. And that's what I do. When I do this, whether I get paid or not, although of course it's nice if I get paid, but I
Yes,
do it.
of course.
I do a lot of pro bono work, for nonprofits, for causes that I really have. I served on many board of
Boards.
directors, a
Mhm.
lot of governance work in my career, starting very early, and then I continue to do that. So I do it for fun, just for fun, translating poetry, reading the poetry readings. Sometimes I write poetry in English or Spanish, translate from French, from English, from Spanish into another language, Portuguese, and that's what I do: language and culture, and all the ways in which you can play with that.
That's amazing, Rico, because I have a question for you. And this is going to be one of those questions that anybody would be wanting to ask, because there are a lot of times we're stereotyped as Latinos, right? So, how have outdated stereotypes about the Latino, Latine, Latinx, we got to use all that different terminology nowadays, to really understand our community, has shaped, public perception and media representation in the US. As our population continues to grow, where do you see that? What's the impact to those perceptions?
Wow, yes, I've seen that. I've seen that all my career, by the way, and it's getting better. I can look a few decades at this point in my professional life, and it is getting better, but we still have a big issue. In many ways, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy because the stereotypes of most Latinos living in the barrio without a lot of money, education, doing manual labor, they translate into those misrepresentations in the media,
Mm-hmm.
which further shapes public perception. So it's a vicious circle. And it's getting better, but that vicious circle keeps self-fulfilling because we see the wrong thing, and then that creates the wrong impression,
It
and
creates a
then there are.
stereotype that's not even actual true. Like there is
I
some people in
know.
that spaces, but we're not all that way. So now that you mentioned that, how does that affect the recent census and uh, Pew Research data? That it's the challenge of traditional native about Latinos in America, because that's one of the things that I see a lot, in education, in politics as well. How does that come about? Like, what kind of examples do you see the data shifting from your understanding? Because you do a lot of this.
The data has been shifting greatly, and a lot of people are still looking at data that maybe they are 40 years old, and whatever they saw in college, that's what they what they still have in their minds. It's like that is a new world altogether now. There are great reports all the time and great data from the Census Bureau that you mentioned. Pew Research is great. Also, the Federal Reserve has very, very specific data about demographics, psychographics, the financial situation of Latinos and other groups in the US. There are many reputable organizations, reputable sources that reveal the traditional narrative. And that's the key thing: the traditional narrative about Latinos is outdated. And there
Exactly.
are many trends that point to a very different reality of Latinos in America today, which little by little I see them emerging,
Hmm.
except that many people don't go to the right conferences, maybe. And so you hear somebody uh,
Or the
basically
wrong
teaching,
networking events, or wrong.
teaching, right,
Exactly.
teaching the wrong narrative. Yes.
So how can professionals in communications and marketing like yourself use social linguistics and cultural anthropology to help authenticate, to engage with Latino audiences? Because like you mentioned, we have that cultural misconcept, right? Our Latinos misconcept, or as we called it, misconceptions, or stereotypes. But how do we get, I think you kind of like mentioned it briefly just right before I asked this question, but knowing where they're going so that they were be engaged in authentic audiences with Latinos, right? Authentic professional audiences. Me and you cross a lot of community networking events together, and we've been in those spaces where we see professionals, but not, we don't, everybody's not there, right? We know everybody's not there because we are trying to build that community to get people that are not being seen. So how do the people that are not being seen or think that they don't know or they don't belong, like you said, with these stereotypes, how does that help them?
Cultural anthropology is about understanding cultures and cultural values and what makes people, and in this case, a group of people, behave in a certain way. Behavior is what we see. When you look at the culture, imagine a giant iceberg, and you have a little part of the iceberg above the surface, and then most of the iceberg is under the surface. Behavior and language and what are the things we see above the surface. What drives the words we use, how we use them, when we use them, the way we act, our behavior, are things under the surface that the closest to the surface is attitudes and perceptions. And then you go deeper and deeper, you get to beliefs and values and worldview, and those things drive the behaviors. So you want to really basically, for a marketer, for example, understanding cultural marketing. You talked about authenticity. Authenticity and relevance are critical in marketing. Otherwise, you're just saying things and people just, you're part of the noise, which we all filter very well. We can go to a
Exactly.
website, all these ads, we just want our content, we forget the ads, we ignore the ads, we kill them. And then if there are too many, we just get out of there and not even look at the content. We won't read your article because you have too many ads on your page, and that's it. So we block those things. We're very good at blocking those things. Cultural marketing is about avoiding being the noise
Hmm.
and really understanding, in this case, understanding that Latinos, number one, are here to stay. And the traditional methods of reaching Latinos are outdated in our growing plurality, especially.
So, what kind of responsibilities would you put on the media outlets? Because they're the ones that also create some of this outdated and inaccurate portrayals of Latinos in our corporate America area. And how can they be held accountable? Like, sometimes it's also like movies and, different kind of media outlets that portray us Latinos always as being like the gangsta, the this, the that. You know what I'm saying? Instead of us being that professional. Why can't you show, the accountant, the doctor, the business owner, things like that? Why is it always portraying us in outdated or inaccurate portrayals?
We are the maid, the drug dealer, the criminal, the laborer. Exactly. The
The
stereotypes are still
cleaner,
there. And the
housekeeper,
thing
the
is
slave.
that, yes, and this, we're just focusing on what's on the screen. One thing we need to do is focus on what's behind the camera. Here's the camera. Let's focus on what's behind the camera because we need to keep working on that. A few years ago, I did interviews of Latinos in Hollywood for a Verizon publication. And I interviewed directors, writers, choreographers, actors, dancers, and people who are in show business and they're on the screen and behind the screen. And that is what continuing to support Latino filmmakers. I'm doing like this because these are behind the screen. This is
Yeah.
the camera. Behind the camera. Behind the camera are the camera operators, the
Hmm.
writers, the content creators, the studio executives, the agents. So many. Just
It's
think of
tons of different
think,
people.
right. Think of the average movie. The movie's over, and the credits
Are
just go on
thousands of people.
forever, forever, forever. It's an army of people. We want to see more Latinos there.
Exactly. We want to. It's not only seeing Latinos in Latinos movies, right? It's seeing
Yes.
Latinos in different type of movies and all kinds of movies. You know. So how can we change that narrative? What can you know? how can we change that narrative around our Latino success and mobility in the next years? Because we still need change, right? You said it's adjusting a little bit, but what barriers are being overlooked that we could kind of like see how to make that change? Because sometimes the thing is that many of us, including myself, we're just educating ourselves on marketing, on AI, on being one of those, part of the change. How can we continue to educate, our community to be mobile, to overlook those barriers? What is something that you suggest?
When it comes to marketing, and this is only one aspect, you have the show business that we've been talking about, all of it really, because marketing could be doing a commercial and you do stereotyping too in
Hmm.
those commercials. One thing is to understand, I believe, starting with from a very, very, very basic perspective, for marketing people to understand that a translation is not marketing. That you wouldn't believe when people who do outreach to Latinos and Hispanic marketing. Number one, most Latinos today speak English.
Exactly.
Most Latinos today in the U.S. are U.S. citizens. And the fact that we speak English doesn't mean that English is the right language to reach me. I speak
Exactly.
English. There are many
Exactly.
Latinos and Latinas who are fully bilingual. They don't have an accent like I have an accent in English. They speak fluent American English because they grew up here. They also were educated in Spanish and speak fluent Spanish natively. And even a person like that, when you say, oh, they speak English, they are part of the general market advertising and we'll just market to them in English. You are sending a message that may not be culturally correct, it may not
Hmm.
align with their cultural values. And a bilingual Latino, when you speak to us in English, you're speaking to the head, because for us, English is the language of the head, the brain, the head.
Exactly.
Spanish is the language of the heart. And
Exactly.
if you're a marketer that understands marketing, advertising, you always speak to the heart. Even in B2B, business to business marketing, that
It's a
commercial
relationship.
buyer is making a hard decision and then doing the spreadsheets and everything else in the brain to justify the purchase. Even in B2B marketing, all emotionals, all decisions are emotional. And that is the main thing to understand. So Spanish or Spanglish can be the right language. A lot of people have the old mode of thinking, okay, let's see, we're going to do Hispanic market. Oh yeah, the Hispanic segment. There are some segments that buy our products. I would love this widget or whatever we sell. Let's do some Hispanic market. So let's see. The first decision. So we do English or Spanish? No,
Exactly. I mean,
there are more options, and then
I,
they'll say, "Oh, hold on, it's bilingual, English and Spanish." Yes, it's like, yeah, keep going. There are many options, including Spanglish. I believe you were
exactly.
when last year
Yeah,
I
we were
presented on
we were we
Spanglish.
were we were we're gonna not sure if we were gonna present in Spanglish today, right? We were like, are we doing English? We doing Spanish, or we do both? Because I'm like what you said. I grew up in both sides. I know fluent English and Spanish, and I know Spanglish, and it's true. Like for me, like when I came here to this state, I was like, oh, I want to find my community, right? I want to find my community. I want to stick to my community. I come from a community like in Florida, Miami, where you see a lot of diversity in our culture, right? And you see a lot of Latinos, but then you come to another state and you don't see that same diversity. So that's where it came to me is like when I came here, I'm like, I'm finding my people, right? I want to be around my people. I want to be around the Latinos. I want to be around, I want to be able to speak my language fluently and be around people and be able to be okay. And, like you mentioned, it's not about the marketing translating it in Spanish. It's about how are you translating it? Are you translating it just for the mind or for the heart? Because, whatever you write, we can tell if you're doing it for one or the other. We have to
Maybe,
make it, even though you're
uh,
using AI too, AI is still something that you can get it to do it based on how you speak, how you want to portray things in your way. But I got a final question for you. And this is a great question, and it just talks about how we can enhance more outside. So, what are some ways Latino communities can help reshape, our American culture, innovate it, and our civil life today? Like, how do these contributions challenge our mainstream perceptions? Because, of course, we titled this talk today, perception versus reality, and I wanted to really bring in the information that you've been talking with, looking at Hispanic communities in the US and how this will help them break those myths.
That's right. Yes, thank you. One thing about translation, you mentioned translation, to do the translation right. Sometimes you don't want to translate, you want to transcreate. And on my website, just a little resource there, on my website, RicoLatino.net, I have a transcreation tab. It's a transcreation page with a short article that explains a lot of that concept of transcreation, which is widely used in Europe, not used enough in the US. Going back to your recent question, I would say let's become voices to educate our neighbors, our spheres of influence, and let's help amplify the big voices out there are already at the national level doing a lot of great education. I'm thinking of two people, there are many, but just two people that are doing that kind of work. John Leguizamo.
Uh-huh.
Some people don't like him. He does a lot of education about the reality of the
I love
Latino
him.
contribution in the US. I went to New York when he who had the one-man show, Latino History for Morons. It was a great show. Today you can see it on Netflix and online. I'm sure maybe even on YouTube. And so John Leguizamo is doing various things, continually educating everybody in the US in English about Latino cultures in the US and the contributions of Latino cultures in the US, and also bringing up to date what's Latino today, which is not back to in the days of Cesar Chavez and the old days.
Exactly.
And
That's old school stuff, but it's
right,
still good. But what I
the
see that um uh how do you say his last name? I can't even say his last
John
name. John.
Leguizamo.
I never say his name right. I love him so much because all the movies, but he's been doing a lot of philanthropy with our
Mhm.
community. And
Right.
that has helped out a lot of people to see him a little differently than they expected him to see, because he's been in that space, right? As
Mhm.
a American Latino comedian and actor in that field, right? He has been through a lot. So I think that's really good that you showcase that. I wish we could bring him here for Lead the Conference. I wish we
I
could bring him here
know.
because we need people like him, right? It would be really nice to have individuals at the LeaderCon conference that show this type of philanthropy out there, as actors, as storytelling, things like this, because we want our community to know exactly what you mentioned too.
Yes. The other person that I recommend people to follow them and help amplify their voices. John Leguizamo, share, and understand what he's saying. The other person is somebody who will be in town in a couple of weeks, Gary Acosta. Gary Acosta is one of the founders of the Hispanic Wealth Project, also one of the founders of NAREP, the National Association of Hispanic Real Estate
Uh-huh.
Professionals. He's coming to town. He's got a new series now going about fixing the Latino brand. We have the Latino brand is not a good brand, as we've been discussing, and we
Hmm.
need to change the narrative. How do we do that? He has a lot of great ideas and concepts, and I think if we help amplify his messaging and voice, that will also go a long ways to help solve this issue.
Well, I'm gonna
What
have to
about
reach
you?
out to him too and tell him to be a guest speaker because he would be awesome.
Uh-huh.
Piggyback off you, or maybe do a panel or something with you and him on it. That would be amazing. Because we are. I don't know if anybody. I'm gonna just throw this out there. We are live, and just FYI, Minnesota is in the process of having a big storm. I'm just letting people know, and we are doing the best that we can to make sure that we are doing this live without having any interruptions. We do apologize if you see any kind of like ins and outs, but hopefully you can hear us. We'll try to do our best to make sure you can hear it well. We did have a couple of people on here watching us live, so I just wanted to throw that out there. But Rico, we wanted to say thank you so much. And what I usually tell my guest speakers is to give like a quote, a word, something that identifies you or what you want people to remember you by, or something that you're always telling people that is something that is distinguished with you alone. And I think that is really good because people want to know more about what you do, especially with technology growing so much, that the things that you do, the things that you offer, especially for nonprofit organizations, can expand out there. And I want you to give us something like that.
Thank you. Yes. Like I said, both professionally and personally, my life is all about language and culture. And the focus has been mostly in marketing communications, starting in international marketing communications, then going into multicultural and Hispanic marketing. And my main concern is what we just discussed today. Let's have the correct narrative. Let's focus on cultural relevance, cultural authenticity, so we can improve and correct the Latino narrative in the US. Let's work together to do that. RicoLatino.net, I have a bunch of tools and things to go from, but it really is a matter of understanding and realizing how our cultures are changing, the realities. In a few days, I'm going to be giving a talk about 5 myths and realities of Latinos in the US. And all of it is about let's communicate and let's speak about Latinos and about our own communities. If you're Latino, Latina, Hispanic, Latinx, Latine, let's help shape the narrative so that we have culturally appropriate and correct perspectives with greater authenticity and relevance about who we are and about our communities.
Thank you so much, Rico, for being here. It's been an honor having you here today. And like he said, I put it in the comments. I put RicoLatino.net. If you want to reach out to Rico one on one, reach out to him, check out his website. He's got great information, as he mentioned there. And if you want to connect with him, not only that, we just want to thank you so much for being here, but also thank you, everyone, for staying tuned to Valentin Consulting's YouTube channel guest speaker series. Tune in every week for some valuable insights and expert advice shared by our guest speakers on topics like business, growth, leadership, and more. Be sure to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel to stay tuned, updated on future episodes of our guest speaker series and other helpful content. Thank you so much and have a wonderful day.
Thank you.